So a short video on which translation of the Inferno I think you should get. This one's by Chardy, Hollander, Mandelbaum and Longfellow. The Longfellow edition actually comes with a bit of video game artwork, so I got this when I was in high school. So I'm pretty sure you can find these translations for free online, so it's just that I'm kind of crazy, that's why I have all four. So I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of each of these translations. So this is the Chardy edition, and one of the good things about Chardy is that he includes a lot of really nice diagrams. So this really helps with understanding what's going on, and especially when you move on to the more complicated sections like the 8th circle of hell, where you have 10 different ditches for different types of sinners. This really becomes really handy with understanding the structure of hell. But then again, I'm pretty sure you can find these diagrams for free online, so it's nice to have it in the book, I guess. And another good thing about Chardy is that he has rhyme, so let's compare Canto 4, so the canto where Virgil and Dante heads to limbo. So a monstrous clap of thunder broke apart, the swoon that stuffed my head, like one awakened, by violent hands I leapt up with a start. So you can see the first and third sentence rhyme, and the same goes for all the other stanzas. He's not trying to recreate the terza rima of Dante. I think that's impossible to recreate perfectly in English, but then he does opt for rhyme in each stanza, so I think you can treat this as kind of like midway between complete blank verse and Dante's terza rima, and I think it's a good choice because it really heightens the poetry of the translation and it makes the reading a lot more pleasurable. And one other good thing about Chardy is that he's really easy to understand, so you don't really have to struggle a lot with his meaning. And then he also includes this really nice summaries before each of his cantos, so these summaries really help you with understanding what's going on. Once again, I'm pretty sure you can find summaries online, but it's nice to have it in the book. So one of the cons of this translation is that it might suffer a bit from accuracy. So I don't know Italian, but so it was fine for me, so I'm not really hardcore when it comes to accuracy. But sometimes when Chardy's trying to create the rhyming between the first and third sentence, sometimes he might shift the order of the meaning relative to the one in the Italian, the original Italian. So the overall meaning is always inside the translation, but sometimes he might shift the order of the meaning. So if you're really hardcore with translation, with accuracy, you might be bothered by this. Chardy himself explains it. He's not exactly trying to create a word-for-word translation of Inferno. He's trying to transpose the original Italian to English. So I think he's done a pretty good job, but if you're really hardcore in terms of accuracy, then you might be bothered a bit by that. And another example of the accuracy problem you can see is that, so say for Canto 4 you have 152 lines, right? So if you compare this with the Italian, so this is the Hollander edition, and then they include the Italian as well. So for Canto 4, you see that there are 151 lines. And the reason for the extra line is that Chardy is trying to end each of his cantos with a couplet. So he's trying to drop the mic before he moves on to the next canto. So again, Canto 4 is an example. In trembling air of hell, I pass from light into the kingdom of eternal night. So I guess it's kind of like Shakespeare when he ends each of his scenes, right, in his plays. So once again, the accuracy might bother you a bit, but for me it was completely fine. So moving on to the Hollander edition, the most obvious pro about the Hollander edition is that they include really extensive notes. So for a poem as packed with references as Inferno, these notes come in really handy with understanding what's going on. And also their translation is really direct, so it's really easy to understand. So it's a complete zero bullshit translation. So again, Canto 4, a heavy thunderclap broke my deep sleep, so that I started up like one shaken away by force. So you can see that the translation is really direct. But then this directness is also one of its cons, so the translation does get kind of dry if you read the English. So there's a lot more poetry in Chardy, and it's a lot less, and it's a lot more direct, and a lot less poetry for a Hollander. So the read is relatively less pleasurable, I guess you can say, compared to Chardy. So Mandelbaum, I actually kind of treat this like the middle way between Hollander and Chardy. So he does not recreate rhyme, but then he's actually less direct and less straightforward than Hollander. So let's check out an example. So he's kind of like the middle path between Chardy and Hollander. So the heavy sleep within my head was smashed by an enormous thunderclap, so that I started up as one whom force awakens. So you see that it also matches with the Italian. So again, for the accuracy, it doesn't suffer from the same problem as Chardy, but then you can also see that it's a lot more wordier than Hollander, and that's because Mandelbaum is trying to create meter in his translation. So you can see the heavy sleep within my head was smashed. That's iambic pentameter. So this meter really does make reading a lot more fun. So if that's important for you, so you might go for Mandelbaum. And actually for this reason, I actually prefer Mandelbaum. So maybe you would too for the same reason. And so for the last edition, Longfellow. So Longfellow is an American poet, a really famous American poet from the 19th century. And then apparently they made a video game for Dante's Inferno. So here's some of the video game art. So apparently that's Cleopatra. And then apparently, I guess, they tried to educate their gamers, so that's why they printed this book as well. And let's compare Canto 4 again. So, broke the deep lethargy within my head, a heavy thunder, so that I am started, like to a person who by force is wakened. So, I think this is kind of similar to Mandelbaum's translation, only except that it opts for archaic vocabulary. So you can see all your thou and your shells. And if you like archaic vocabulary, then you might go for this. But then again, sometimes it does impede with understanding, like you get these weird words, falchion. So apparently this means sword. I've never seen this word before, and I'll probably never use it. So if you like this kind of wording, then you might go for this, but for me, it kind of affected my understanding, so I kept having to look up these words. And sometimes the word ordering is also kind of weird, so I guess he's trying to create the meters, because Longfellow actually largely conforms to iambic pentameter as well. So, and round about I moved my rested eyes, so that's iambic pentameter as well. So because of that, sometimes the word ordering is kind of weird. So say for example, in the right manner they adored not God. So this is actually they did not adore God by the right manner. So you can see that compared to normal speech, the word ordering is completely mixed. So I've heard people say that a lot of hardcore Dante fans actually gravitate towards Longfellow's translation eventually. So maybe I'm missing something, so I'm not at the point where I can appreciate that. So if you're into this type of thing, maybe the Longfellow translation might do well for you. But if you're reading it for the first time, then maybe the Mandelbaum translation might be a bit better.